So this is Dana. She is the Director of Health Promotion at the Department of Behavioral Health in Philly. And we're going to be talking about a general shift that we're seeing in the way people are thinking about their own health. Yeah, so let's get started talking about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be having this conversation. It's something that we're talking a lot about in Philadelphia right now. It's something that we're seeing start to trend nationally, and the conversation's really beginning to move towards a place of thinking differently about health, period.
Awesome. So tell me more about what these conversations entail and who's having them.
Sure. So one of the things that we're seeing a lot of right now is that people are looking to their communities for access to their health and well-being resources. Traditional schools of thought would say you have to go to a doctor or you have to go see a therapist in order to get treatment that you need. And while that works for many people, for many others, we're seeing that you need to meet them where they are and go into the communities, go into places where people find comfort, whether it's a yoga studio, whether it's a primary care office, whether it's a health fair, things like that. We need to start thinking about where people eat, play, shop, live, and bring awareness about mental health and well-being to those places. That term typically is referred to as population health, and it's this idea that we're serving all in order to address needs earlier and in order to get to people before they end up in a critical situation or before they have to seek crisis care or intervention. So that's a little bit of an idea of what we're beginning to see and hear and talk about.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's really a more preventative model as opposed to treating somebody when they've already noticed something.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
At the Department of Behavioral Health, we talk a lot about, and here the commissioner talk a lot about moving upstream or early intervention, as you said, prevention. You know, with physical health care, you see people go for their annual primary care visit. People get blood pressure checks when they go to CVS or to any retail clinic, but we don't do the same thing about our mental health and our well-being. And so the idea with population health is to start paralleling or to mirror that process and to move upstream to get people thinking about it, talking about it, reducing stigma, increasing access to resources before they end up in a crisis response center or needing really acute treatment. And that's still going to happen, just like heart attacks are still going to happen. But if we can move the dial and start to move all of this to a more normalized, more common place, we're going to be a lot further ahead.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a lot of things in there, like access to resources, stigma, all those types of things. Are those, I guess there's things you perceive as barriers right now?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there's stigma everywhere. There's stigma even within ourselves. And so the first thing is acknowledging that there is that stigma and there are barriers. And the more we can talk about it, the better off we'll be. I mean, if you think about it statistically, and I love thinking about it in this way, this is really helpful for me visually, 1 out of every 4 adults lives with a diagnosable mental health challenge.
1 in 4.
1 in 4.
Wow.
1 in 5 children. So if you take this park and you cut it into quarters, a quarter of this entire park right now is living with a diagnosable mental illness, statistically speaking. If you take the Phillies Stadium, Citizens Bank Park, and you divide it into 4,
wow,
and you think about 40,000 people there, 10,000 of them, statistically speaking, are living with a diagnosable mental health challenge. If we walked around in a world where 25% of the population was living with a physical health issue, like a broken arm or a broken leg, you can be positive that we would be changing the ways in which we provide and make available resources for that physical health challenge. We don't do that for mental health. And so this population health approach says we need to start doing that.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So can you talk more deeply about the stigma? So I think that's something that we talk about really commonly in the mental health field, but like when you talk about that, what exactly do you mean?
When I talk about stigma, I mean it is so pervasive that even people who are in the field are sometimes afraid to talk about it. I mean that it is something that is so tied to notions of weakness, of shame, of blame, that we really need to get beyond, because until we do, we're going to continue to point fingers. We're going to continue to tell people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. We're going to tell people to, can't you just get over it? Or why can't they just X, Y, or Z? You can fill in the blank. So when I think about stigma, I think about needing to literally break down this idea that it's any different than the way we think about physical health diseases. One of the best things I heard recently was someone who said, why do we call it mental health? The brain is the largest organ in the body. That's physical health.
Yeah.
And if you think about mental illness as a physical illness, we might be able to think about it a little bit differently there too.
Absolutely. That's fascinating. So that's great. So when we're talking about physical health, mental health, and sort of starting to bridge those gaps, where are you seeing momentum in that sort of vein, in Philly specifically or generally?
I think you're going to start to see more of people like you, things like people who are interested in the conversation about how to integrate physical health, whether it's yoga or cycling or running, with a mental health or relaxation or mindfulness component. We're going to continue, and it's popping up in different places, boutiques, different fitness, integrated care models. But you'll also see things like we have started doing at the Department of Behavioral Health. We have an initiative called Healthy Minds Philly. And the entire idea is that a healthy mind is just as important as a healthy body.
Yeah.
And so putting resources and dollars and momentum behind large-scale initiatives, in addition to the work that's happening by individuals within the community, I think is what it's going to take to move all of this forward.
All right. So we talked about this integrated approach to healthcare, this population health, and you're seeing it individually, but also at the bigger level of the Department of Behavioral Health. Do you think that the public is ready for that sort of thing? Like people in general ready to approach their healthcare, their mental health care in this way?
And that's a great question, and one that comes up a lot. Whenever we're thinking about doing innovative approaches to community work or to population health approaches, people often say, you sure people are ready to hear that? Or do you really want to go to the coffee shop to talk about mental health, or to the health fair? And I have a story that highlights just how ready I believe the public is. One story and one statistic for you.
Okay.
So in 2012, when the Department of Behavioral Health began all this work, we decided to host our very first National Depression Screening Day. And National Depression Screening Day, or NDSD, is held the second Thursday every year in October. And we decided, let's give this a shot. And people within our own field and our own institution said, you sure you want to host a day where you ask people about mental health and depression? And we said, if we're going to move upstream, we're going to have to, so let's give it a shot. And we went into what is now called Jefferson Station, Market East Station. And over 400 people came through with almost zero marketing, zero anything, and 112 people sat down with us, every walk of life, and took a screening.
Oh my goodness.
On how they were feeling. And for many people, they don't want to go into an office. They don't want to go into a doctor's office, or there might be white lab syndrome, white coat syndrome, or they want to feel like it's okay to talk about it. And so from that point on, we just never looked back. To date, over 15,000 screenings have taken place through the Department of Behavioral Health and provider partners throughout the network in Philadelphia. When we first launched Healthy Minds Philly online, healthymindsphilly.org, the very first year, in 2013, the site went live, we had about 1,400 people come to the site.
Wow.
3 years in, we've had 66,000 people come to the site.
Wow.
So when I think about, is the public ready? Yes, the public is ready. I think it requires us being creative about how people want to receive that information.
Yeah.
And how we're going to get that information in front of people. So we're moving out of the newborn stage of population health and integrative health, and we're really starting to learn from those first 3 years, and we're shifting into a place where we feel like we have a good idea about what people are looking for and how they want it.
That's awesome.
It's exponentially going.
That's awesome. So, okay, so where will you see that trending towards? Like, what's the next step?
I think we're just going to see more and more of it.
Okay.
We're going to see more creative uses of technology, whether it's a video like this, or whether it's the Healthy Minds Philly website, or whether it is, there's even a really cool program available to all Philadelphians free of charge called Beating the Blues. I don't know if you've heard of this. I'm learning about it in the last year or two. It's an online CBT-based, cognitive behavioral therapy-based program.
Wow.
Evidence-based, 8 modules for someone experiencing mild to moderate depression or anxiety who can walk themselves through an evidence-based program rooted in CBT.
Wow.
So maybe they're not quite ready to go in for treatment. Maybe they're not even sure if that's what they need. You're going to see more and more of things like that.
That's
Technology, creativity, and community-based interventions throughout the area. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing stuff.
Yeah. There's really good stuff happening.
Yeah. It's great to hear that there is really great stuff happening like that.
Yeah.
What about like the physical, I'm thinking about like the physical places, like when you're saying like going to these people and like where they are in their community, where physically are you thinking about?
So it's happening in a few ways. What we're starting to get more and more of at the department is requests for screenings for us or for someone who's trained. We have over 60 trained partners in the city of Philadelphia to bring screenings to a physical location. So someone might say, we're having a church fair this weekend. We're going to be offering community resources, and we'd love to include behavioral health screenings.
Yeah.
Or you might start to see, they're called behavioral health kiosks. Think about similar to a blood pressure machine or an ATM machine. In 2014, we entered a competition with our partners in Boston, Screening for Mental Health, to design a kiosk where folks can go and screen themselves at the same time that they get their blood pressure checked. You're going to start to see more linkages like that.
Wow.
We say things when we're out in the community. It's as easy as getting your blood pressure checked. A healthy mind is just as important as a healthy body. Get a checkup from the neck up. We use language that references physical triggers or reminders for folks that normalizes all of it while leading them towards the mental health. So, and that, to answer your question, where do I see it physically? It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Those are just some examples.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that makes it more accessible for people too, like when you talk about their physicality. And I think that that's what's really helpful as well when we're talking about bridging that gap, you know? Because like the fitness arena in Philly is like booming
Huge.
and going wild. It's humongous. So, so yeah, it's really interesting to see how all of those things are kind of coming together.
Yeah. I think it's just going to keep going that way. I don't see any signs of it slowing.
That's great.
Whether it's, like I said, from a federal dollar standpoint or whether it's a community one-on-one. I mean, you and I love talking about this stuff. I'm sure there are other people like you and I who love talking about this stuff. So it's at the individual level, it's at the community level, it's at the state level, it's happening nationally. And we know from research that your mental health directly impacts your physical health. We know that individuals who experience trauma as children, have you heard of the ACEs study?
No.
It's phenomenal. I'll send it to you. Adverse Childhood Experiences Study.
Okay.
And it looks at the more traumatic events you have as a child, the more likely you are to have physical health parallels
Oh my
as
gosh.
an adult. And that the lifespan is 25 years shorter
Wow.
for individuals who live with 4 or more. I have to double check that statistic. I'm pretty sure it's 4 or more ACEs.
Wow.
25 years. That's a public health crisis.
Yeah.
That's a really big deal.
That's huge.
So we have to talk about it.
Yeah. It's good to see that, or good to hear that those things are trickling down, even though we might not necessarily know about it in our day-to-day lives.
It's happening.
That's really cool. I'll put this in. I have a question. I don't remember where it is.
That's a good point.
Where is it? Where is it? So we're talking about how we're like accessing mental health screenings in a lot of different places, going out into the community. We're seeing a lot of different things pop up. What do you think when we're talking about, like, from my yoga perspective, or like trying to get people to come to a class, trying to get people to take care of their physical and mental health, what do you think are some barriers to that? We already mentioned some, but like, what are some ways that we can hook people, overcome it and really get people to take action?
I think two immediate things come to mind. One is using language that feels safe for people. So saying things like physical health and well-being, or pairing the introduction of mental health dialogue with things that people already feel safe about. So, you know, come to my yoga and mindfulness class where we'll be talking about a number of things, including, you know, and weaving it in and starting to get people familiar with it. The second thing, and I heard you say something, is how do I get people to do something about it? I think you need to include a call to action, something, whether it's social media or whether it's, you know, on your website. I'm not sure. This video, like this way, I'm not sure, but a call to action, or putting people, calling people to something, to do something like 30 days and 30 days of mindfulness and well-being, or I challenge you all to X, Y, or Z.
Got it.
I think you have to, emotional safety plus motivation.
Got it.
will help
Bridging that
people.
gap.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that as like fitness professionals, as a yoga teacher, I'm constantly trying to figure out how to motivate people. How do you think about that in terms of like a broader perspective, motivating people to take charge of their health?
I think it requires branding. I think it requires social media is huge. Technology is huge. So many people feel so much safer on their phones, on their computers. And so tapping into that to get people out of that, to get themselves out of the phone and out of the computer and away from that isolation, we need to use those vehicles to get people there.
Got it.
And even hearing you say, like, who knew all these things were happening? Like, they're happening, and they're happening in a big way, but people don't know about it.
Right.
So needing to continue to push the envelope in terms of marketing and branding. And I mentioned to you earlier, using things like public transportation advertising. We're working on that right now. Radio, internet, commercials, meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
So it you know, kind of comes full circle when we think about population health and moving upstream and early intervention. And the ways in which we get people in have to be where people are.
Exactly, yeah.
There's no other. We can't expect people to find out about it by accident.
Yeah.
It won't
It just
happen.
makes sense,
Right.
yeah. So if somebody were watching this, all 5 people, no, somebody's watching this,
All 500,000
all 500,000 people, how would they access some of the resources that you mentioned?
So I would direct people to healthymindsphilly.org, Healthy Minds, plural, Philly.org. And there you can find so many wonderful resources, from a wellness corner where it talks about mind, body, soul. And there's resources throughout the city of Philadelphia available that look at all of those things, from cooking demonstrations to yoga classes to the best running trails around. A community calendar is available. Access to behavioral health screenings. And one thing that we haven't talked about that I want to make sure I mention is mental health first aid training. Mental health first aid training, Philadelphia has really taken this on and is a leader nationally. We're the largest city of its size to take this training on. And Red Cross Philadelphia chapter is the first in the nation to partner CPR training with mental health first aid training.
Wow.
Philadelphia is doing unbelievably innovative things. Mental health first aid training is a way to increase the mental health literacy of anybody. You know, moving away from thinking about having to train just people in the field.
Right.
It provides a 5-step action plan to identify signs and symptoms of someone experiencing a mental health challenge. And to date, over 15,000 people have been trained in mental health first aid. Our goal is 20,000 by the end of the year.
Wow.
So that is also available on mental health first aid. On healthymindsphilly.org. There's a ton of great stuff, and anybody can sign up for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's free if you live, work, play, study in Philadelphia.
That's
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're
for telling
welcome.
us
Thank
all
you
this
for
stuff.
having me.
Yeah, it was awesome talking with you about all
Bye.
this. Bye.